Everybody, what is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, of course, I thought that I would talk about this little interesting news. Of course, for those of you that have heard, Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury, I believe, have been ordered to fight. I believe next for the WBC title. Of course, Tyson Fury's WBC title. He was able to defend it in his last fight against Deontay Wilder, and in my opinion, beat Deontay Wilder for the third occasion. But anyways, this is going to be a very interesting fight. I do believe that Dillian Whyte, I do believe that he is one of the top five heavyweights in the world as of right now. I don't necessarily think that I can put him on the Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk or Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder level. But what I will say is that, in my opinion, out of all the guys that maybe just won one belt and lost it quickly, or out of all the guys that could be looked at as some of the top competitors or contenders, besides those other guys within the heavyweight division, I think Dillian Whyte is the toughest competitor out of all of them. I think that he's all around better than Joseph Parker. I think he's all around better than Joe Joyce. I think that he's all around better than Alexander Povetkin. I think that he's better than any of those competitors. So Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, I would not necessarily say that I would expect him to beat Fury or anything like that, but Dillian Whyte could provide some challenges. We'll have to see what happens. It'll be very, very interesting. Anyways, Dante's Boxing Nation, he's going to talk about it. And of course, it's always interesting to hear what Dante has to say because, of course, Dante usually tends to be one of the more delusional bunch, whether he believes in some of the stuff that he says or not. Dante always likes to say a lot of inflammatory statements, a lot of stuff that is usually based in delusion and emotion because, of course, Dante's Boxing Nation, he does not like Tyson Fury. He hates that man with a burning passion because he basically knows that Tyson Fury, not only did he beat up his boy Deontay Wilder, but on top of that, Tyson Fury, now that he has won against Deontay Wilder, who was an A-grade fighter. Now, certain people, they'll say, well, yeah, sure, Deontay, he had power, but he wasn't that skilled of a fighter. This is why I compare Deontay Wilder to the George Foreman of this era. Deontay Wilder was basically a lesser version of George Foreman in this era. That's pretty much what he was. People always act like all the great heavyweights or all the heavyweights from the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s that they were all just 100% A grade or that they would have just completely tore up the heavyweight division today. But there's no way to basically quantify that. It is what it is. There are certain fighters like a George Foreman that, yeah, they may be all-time great fighters, but they were not highly skilled for their day. They were not known for their extreme, slick, and smart boxing craft. That's why I say Deontay Wilder, in terms of style, he's pretty much the George Foreman of his day. He's very big. He's decently athletic. Got the power to knock out a horse. But, if you have a plan B or a plan C, and if you're able to get past that power, they didn't really know what to do with you. That's why I say they're very, very similar. It just is what it is. But Tyson Fury, when it comes down to it, he is the only heavyweight that remains undefeated to this day. And Dante knows that he has to do some sort of damage control on Tyson Fury, or he knows that Tyson Fury is going to be debated within the ranks as the greatest heavyweight of all time. Especially if he ends up defeating Alexander Usyk or Anthony Joshua, he is going to be in that conversation. And a certain amount of people, they can disagree with that all they want to. But at the end of the day, if Tyson Fury is able to retire undefeated, Dante realizes that Tyson Fury, that he is going to be in those discussions. And that's why Dante, he's never going to give Tyson Fury ever really full credit when it comes down to it. That's why he now tore down his Deontay Wilder wins and also tore down his Vladimir Klitschko wins. Even though those were two A-grade wins, he basically went as far to throw his boy Deontay Wilder under the bus completely because the outcome that he wanted did not end up happening. So he said, okay, so how can I degrade Tyson Fury? How can I basically discredit him? I can basically say that he has never fought a complete fighter in the ring. That's basically what I can say. I can also put polls out there and basically ask the question, Tyson Fury, sure, he's a great fighter. He's the best in the heavyweight division. But how skilled is he really? Let's compare him to Terrence Crawford and Shakur Stevenson and Canelo Alvarez. Certain fighters that, of course, on the surface look more skilled than Tyson Fury because usually people in the lower weight classes, they usually look more skilled than that of a bigger heavyweight. People who have bigger bodies and it's harder for them to move as fast when it comes down to it and a certain amount of other things. And of course, Dante and a certain amount of other people would mention, well, Mike Tyson can compete. Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali could compete with almost any weight class in terms of a skill set. Well, could they really? Let's talk about Mike Tyson for a minute. Is Mike Tyson as great of a fighter as Tommy Hearns or Sugar Ray Leonard or Marvin Hagler? Or is he as great of a fighter as any of those guys? because people always love to jerk off over Mike Tyson's alleged great skill set. And I think that, at his peak, he was a great fighter, but he was also a person that would have mental breakdowns. Let's take a look at Mike Tyson throughout the biggest fights of his career. Who really did he beat that was A grade? The man lost to Buster Douglas. He lost to Evander Holyfield. He lost to Lennox Lewis. The biggest opponent that he ever really beat, at least at their peak, was probably Ruddock. That was really about it. So it is what it is. We can talk about skill all the day long, but if you're not beating the A-class fighters, it really doesn't matter. And Deontay, you notice that he does not do this with certain fighters that he tends to like. He'll have certain fighters like Deontay Wilder and Jamal Charlo in the top 10 pound-for-pound list, but you notice that he doesn't go and say, oh, well, sure, they're great fighters, but are they even as skilled as Vasily Lomachenko? Are they as skilled as Gervonta Tank Davis or Shakur Stevenson? He would never ask that question because he knows all in all what he's doing. He knows that his whole entire objective basically is to try and tear down Tyson Fury. That's why he asked an irrelevant question like that. It is what it is. Anyways, let's get into the video. Let's see what Dante's Boxing Nation has to say. And I'm also going to talk about what I think about this fight.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So the WBC has made it official. The Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte fight has been ordered. And the long time mandatory Dillian Whyte may finally be getting his shot at the title. This is so ironic because this is the second time that Tyson Fury is being forced to fight someone that he does not want to fight. Tyson has been desperately trying to get that Usyk fight, but Undisputed, they offered to pay Anthony Joshua some step-aside money.
That's so interesting how Tyson Fury is allegedly ducking Dillian Whyte because he wanted to face Alexander Usyk for the rest of the titles. Now, if this were Devin Haney or Gervonta Tank Davis that wanted to do this, Dante would be giving them all the credit in the world. Now, don't get me wrong. In my opinion, certain fighters that may have, be a unified champion, they may be weaker than an opponent overall that doesn't have any belts. I understand that. Like, let's say for Gervonta Tank Davis, for example, if he were to face George Kambosos next, I think that is an A-grade fight, but I think that George Kambosos, I think that he's an A- fighter. I don't think that he's an A or A+ fighter. I just think that he's too defensively irresponsible. He has good feet. He has overall great head movement as well. Good ring generalship, but he does not have the power. He does not have the athleticism. He does not have the defensive responsibility, in my opinion, to defeat someone like a Gervonta Tank Davis. I just don't see it. So in my opinion, I think a fight even against Jose Ramirez or Regis Prograis would probably be more dangerous for Gervonta Tank Davis, two people that don't have belts right now, than it would be, against a George Kambosos. So that's understandable. Not everyone that, doesn't have a belt isn't always, not as good as someone who has a belt. But when it comes down to it, all in all, Dillian Whyte, even though I think that he's a very, very good fighter, I mean, we all know at the end of the day that Vladimir Klitschko and Deontay Wilder, at least in my opinion, were bigger threats to Tyson Fury. Now, of course, styles make fights. But we'll see all in all what happens. I just don't see Dillian Whyte beating Tyson Fury. That's not me saying that it can't happen. That's not me saying that I'd be shell-shocked if an upset happened. But I do believe that Tyson Fury, of course, is the best all-around heavyweight fighter of his day. And Dillian Whyte, even though I think he's a very decent fighter, I don't know if he has what it takes to defeat someone like a Tyson Fury. But we'll see what happens.
When Anthony Joshua said he wanted at least $40 to $50 million, that's when they realized he wasn't stepping to the side. Now, we already know what time it is. We know a lot of these fans are going to sit over here and say Dillian Whyte is this big bum, etc., etc. But deep down in their hearts, deep down in any boxing fan's hearts, if you know anything about boxing, then you should know this is a very difficult, dangerous fight for Deontay Wilder. And that's the reason why he doesn't want it.
I think you mean Tyson Fury, but it is what it is. But Dante also tries to spread the rumors that Tyson Fury is allegedly ducking Dillian Whyte because Dillian Whyte apparently knocked him out in sparring and overall, did all this shit to him in sparring. All that is alleged. I would have to see that, but we all know Dante, he's going to go along with that narrative anyway because, once again, he hates Tyson Fury's guts. He hates Tyson Fury overall more than anyone else in the world right now. There's two people that he hates so much. Number one is Canelo Alvarez, and number two is Tyson Fury. He may even hate Tyson Fury more all in all than he hates Canelo Alvarez.
I keep telling you guys, Tyson Fury has not faced a complete fighter since he's been at the heavyweight division. And when I say
and that's basically Dante's way of saying that yes, Tyson Fury is a great fighter, but he's not going to get any credit from me anytime soon. That's basically Dante's way of saying that I will never give Tyson Fury credit. He is never going to be in the conversation as one of the greats, in my opinion. You know, not only in my opinion do I think that he's not skilled, but I'm going to try to discredit him any way that I can. That's basically what Dante is saying. And if Tyson Fury is able to defeat Dillian Whyte, you know, especially in somewhat of a dominant fashion, he's not going to give Tyson Fury credit for defeating Dillian Whyte either. Just like Canelo, every time he defeats an undefeated opponent, he may use that person's name at the time all overall to say that Canelo Alvarez is avoiding them. But, you know, when we all thought that Jamal Charlo and Canelo was going to happen next, what was Dante saying? He was saying, well, of course he fights him now for Jamal Charlo's worst performance. So with the fighters that Dante don't like, he's not going to give him credit anyway. So it doesn't really matter overall what he says anyway in the long run. Dante cannot be relied upon once again. He's a very over-emotional person who has a racial agenda. You can't rely on someone like that. And on top of that, the man has no idea what the hell he's talking about usually anyway. Dante really don't know shit about boxing. Unfortunately, most people who talk about what they're talking about, they usually don't know what the hell they're talking about anyway, especially when it comes to most sports. Most people really don't know shit about boxing.
I mean, not someone like Deontay Wilder that just wings the right hand. I'm talking about fighters that have jabs, fighters that have counter-punching ability, hooks to the body, hooks up top, uppercuts, everything you can think about. This is what Dillian Whyte brings to the ring. You know, with Tyson Fury coming to the ring as heavy as he does, the one good thing about it is it definitely helps him increase his power. But the problem is he's so sloppy and he lacks great defense. Unlike Deontay Wilder.
No, he does not really lack great defense. What I will say is this, though, however, Tyson Fury did lack great defense in his last fight against Deontay Wilder. I'm not going to say that it was bad defense. I would give Tyson Fury's performance all in all probably about a B, maybe B+, but I'm not even sure if I'll go that far. It's within that B+ to B- range, somewhere around there, which means that you could give it a regular B as well, but I can't give it an A grade. I think in the first fight, because, you know, because of the layoff and because all in all, you know, Tyson Fury, he had not really been used to fighting elite opponents. I'd maybe give his performance in the first fight, especially because Deontay Wilder had all that mojo heading into that fight. I'd maybe say B+ to A-. The second fight, I'd for sure give him an A+. He was phenomenal in that rematch. And in the third match, I'd probably give him about a B. That's probably what I'd give him because I don't think all in all that he was very good in the third match, at least compared to his standards. I know that Tyson Fury can fight a lot better than that. You can see it in the Deontay Wilder rematch. You can also see it in the Vladimir Klitschko fight. Tyson Fury is usually very defensively responsible. He also has great head movement for his size, decent feet. He can be a little bit sloppy here and there, but I think especially ever since he's went to the Kronk gym, Tyson Fury has really worked on his technique.
Dillian Whyte is almost the same size as Anthony Joshua. This is going to make for a really good fight. It's going to make for a really good fight. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
But anyways, that's really about overall it for this. I just think that is very, very interesting. But, you know, Dante is going to try to spread a certain amount of narratives for this. He is really hoping and praying that Tyson Fury loses to Dillian Whyte because he hates that man with a burning passion. But anyways, when it comes down to it, I think that this is a very intriguing fight. I think that it's very interesting. I don't think that it's as interesting as the Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk fight. But it's still a very interesting fight. Dillian Whyte does deserve a shot. He's been the mandatory for a couple years, I believe, when it comes down to it. So Dillian Whyte, when it comes down to it, man, he certainly does deserve a shot. He's a very decent fighter. And who knows? Maybe he can be more of a challenge than what I think to Tyson Fury. He's decently powerful. He does have decent technique. He certainly has improved his resume and improved his technique. Do I personally believe that he'll beat Tyson Fury? Probably not, but I think all in all that if Tyson Fury, let's say he's able to have a dominant performance, meaning that he's able to even possibly beat him 8 rounds to 4, I think all in all that it will be a very interesting fight. Very interesting fight indeed, but we'll see all in all what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. I guess the last thing that maybe I'll talk about is do I think that Dillian Whyte, or who do I think is the most challenging fight for Tyson Fury out there? And I'm not really sure about that question because Tyson Fury, in my opinion, at least for today, compared to any other heavyweight, is such a complete fighter that I don't really know if any other heavyweight is going to defeat him. I don't know if Alexander Usyk has the size over Tyson Fury, although he's a very complete fighter. Dillian Whyte's a very decent fighter, but I don't think that he's going to beat Tyson Fury. And then, of course, you have Anthony Joshua. Now, certain people I've seen them basically say, well, Tyson Fury, he wants that Alexander Usyk fight, but he doesn't want Anthony Joshua. He's just ducking the big fights and all this other stuff. I've seen multiple people say that. And I don't think people realize all in all that styles make fights. And at the end of the day, Alexander Usyk, he's the one that has the belts. I predicted Anthony Joshua to win that first fight against Alexander Usyk, but this is my opinion, especially after seeing that rematch. I don't think Anthony Joshua can beat Alexander Usyk, at least if both of them, bring their best to the table. Maybe if Anthony Joshua trains in the Mayweather gym and gets some pointers, but even then, I like Anthony Joshua a lot. I think Anthony is a decently great fighter. I think he gets a lot of shit for what he has accomplished when it comes down to it. Anthony is a great fighter, to make no mistake about it. One of the best heavyweights at this time. But Alexander Usyk is an extremely complete fighter. And Anthony Joshua, I also don't think that he has the punch resistance to stand up to Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk is great at angles. He's a great fighter. He's got underestimated power. Alexander Usyk, on top of that, has excellent confidence in himself and has better punch resistance. So we'll see all in all what happens. And Tyson Fury, he's been usually more known to have problems against the smaller, slicker fighters, especially that could get on the inside. But we'll see what happens. That's why I don't think that Anthony Joshua, even though he's a very decent fighter, I don't know if Anthony Joshua is going to be the biggest challenge out there for Fury. I don't know if White is either. It may actually be Alexander Usyk. But we'll see what happens with that. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. And I'll talk to you all later, and we'll see what happens with this fight.